The necromancers began to approach her and prepared to finish her off. With her last bit of strength, she reached out her hand towards Jong and asked him to save her. Jong turned his head towards her and with a serious look, he started to gaze at her and remained silent in deep thought. Several necromancers grabbed Mu Hanqui's arm, but at that moment, Jong also grabbed her arm and asked her to flee. She began to look at his arm with a confused expression and couldn't help but wonder what was happening. Using all his strength, Jong pushed Mu Hanqui aside and threw her backwards, saving her from the necromancer's attack. While he had one hand extended backwards, he stared intently at the necromancers and asked her to get away from here and stop interfering. She started running backwards, and then suddenly she tripped and fell to the ground. Several seconds later, while she had one hand on the ground, she began to sit up, started wiping her face with the other hand. And while one eye was closed, she began to look at him with the other and thought that Jiang Chen was crazy. A purple energy appeared, and upon seeing this, her expression changed drastically. She couldn't help but be shocked and started wondering what was happening. Jong extended his hand towards the necromancers, releasing a swarm of insects that quickly advanced towards them and began attacking, tearing their bodies into pieces. Mu Hanqui, who was behind Jong, couldn't help but think that he was very handsome. In an instant, the insects killed and completely devoured the necromancers. While Jong's body was releasing Little Nine's poisonous mist, he simply remained silent. Mu Hanqui placed both hands on the ground, sat down, started looking at Jong and couldn't help but wonder if he really was a useless person from the creation class. Jai Gang had told her that he had 2 classes, and she quickly realized that this was his true power. She put her hand over her mouth, started blushing, and looked at Jong with a loving gaze. Her heart was beating very fast, which meant she was in love. 30 minutes later, the others finally got rid of the necromancers and gathered somewhere in the village. Chu Buling placed both hands on his knees, started breathing heavily, and couldn't help but think that necromancers were very powerful. Duanfeng began touching his head with his hand and with a confused look thought that this was very strange since he hadn't come across another necromancer since he had left that house. Xiaoqi, who was holding the magical staff with both hands, turned her head towards them and asked Duanfeng if it could be possible that Mu Hanqui had the ability to control necromancers. They also didn't know if she had awakened any hidden class, which was very strange for her too. She started pointing to one side with her finger and, with a surprised look, drew the attention of the others and informed them that there were traces of a fight, which meant that the battle had ended recently. Chu Buling began to look in the direction she was pointing and couldn't help but feel somewhat confused. Duanfeng also started looking, but he was more concerned about Jong as he didn't know if he was okay. Not far from them were some remains of the necromancers, covered by Little Nine's poisonous mist. They approached the area, and Xiaoqi, who was holding the magical staff with one hand, stood there speechless upon seeing that these were indeed remnants of the necromancers. Duanfeng couldn't help but panic. He asked the others to quickly search for Jong, as if something were to happen to him, none of them would be able to take the responsibility. After this, the 3 dispersed throughout the village and began searching for Jong. Several minutes later, they started following the traces and turned a corner. Upon seeing what was in front of them, they couldn't help but be shocked. Duanfeng was in shock. He couldn't believe what his eyes were seeing. Xiaoqi was somewhat surprised and began to wonder what was happening. In front of them there was a street with small stairs, and on these stairs sat Jong, who had both elbows resting on his knees and his head supported on his hand. Beside him was Mu Hanqui. She clenched her fists tightly, sat behind him, and started massaging his back. Near them, on the ground, there were more remains of necromancers. Chu Buling, who was behind them, asked Duanfeng if that was Jong. Xiaoqi began pointing to the sky with her finger and, with a surprised look, told him that it was indeed Jong. Duanfeng started looking at Jong with a confused expression and asked the others not to move because this was too strange. He didn't understand how the granddaughter of a king could be giving back massages to Jiang Chen as if she were a servant. He came to the conclusion that these 2 were probably illusions created by the boss of this secret realm. Mu Hanqui clenched her fists, stood behind Jong, and started giving him a massage. Both of them looked ahead and saw Duanfeng and the others. Upon seeing that they had arrived, Jiang stood up, pointed to one side with his thumb, and explained to them that the boss was in the backyard of the village. Far from feeling relieved, they adopted an offensive stance. Duanfeng took out his bow and with a serious look ordered them not to move. Chu Buling clenched both fists and prepared to attack. Xiaoqi tightly held the magical staff, stared at Jong, and asked him to answer the question they were going to ask first. Upon hearing this, Jong and Mu Hanqui couldn't help but feel somewhat confused. She stood up, positioned herself in front of him, extended her hands to the sides, looked at them with a serious gaze, and told them that if they wanted to harm Jong, then they would have to step over her dead body first. He began to look at her with a confused look and couldn't help but wonder what she was doing and why she was behaving this way. Jong put his hand on her face, pushed her aside, stood in front of her, closed his eyes, placed the other hand on his chest, and with a smile explained to Duanfeng that he knew what they were thinking. He revealed to everyone that he wasn't any monster, he just had a little more charm. They didn't respond, and upon seeing this, he told them that their boss was named Jigang and Aunt Tang cooked very well. Xiaoqi approached him, placed both hands on his chest, and asked if he was injured. He started touching his head with his hand, closed his eyes, and began to smile. Chu Bulan couldn't help but feel relieved to see that he really was Jiang and wasn't hurt. On the other hand, Duanfeng remained somewhat confused. Mu Hunkui, who was hiding behind Jiang, grabbed his cloak with one hand and, while blushing like a tomato, asked the others not to be angry with her because she was just being obedient. Jiang turned his head towards her and with an angry look asked her to tell the truth and stop lying. Upon hearing this, Xiaoqi was somewhat surprised as she did not expect this from him. Duanfeng began to smile and thought that he really had the skills to conquer women. Chu Buling also started to smile and thought that he was hopeless. Jiang began to feel overwhelmed and with a shout, told them that it was enough already. He also asked if they didn't want to defeat the boss. In response, the others started to smile and changed the subject by saying yes. Some time later, they arrived at the backyard of the village. With a determined look, Jiang gave a strong kick to the door while the others simply remained silent. They opened the door and started entering the backyard. In front of them stood the boss of this secret realm, who was giant and had a murderous gaze. It slightly lowered its head and began staring fixedly at Jiang. A system window appeared and informed everyone that this boss was called the God of the Undead, had a boss rank, and was level 40. Jiang raised his head and began to stare at the boss, silently contemplating. Everyone started looking at the boss and couldn't help but be shocked. With a serious and determined look, Duanfeng revealed to them that this was the level 40 boss. He also asked them to be careful as he would attract its attention first. He assigned Mu Henku with the task of protecting Jiang. He also asked Xiaoqi not to forget to use the buff and advised her to be careful with the boss's attacks. They couldn't be reckless, they had to try to ensure their own safety while attacking. They had to be very careful because this was no game. The boss simply started looking at them and remained silent, and several seconds later, it began to move. Seeing this, Duanfeng asked the others to be careful as it was moving, and also ordered them to separate. But to everyone's surprise, instead of attacking, the boss crouched down, rested its elbow on the ground, and prostrated itself before them, leaving everyone in shock. The boss's body began to tremble. Duanfeng was dumbfounded and with a surprised look he started wondering what was happening. Chu Buling was also astonished. He was surprised because he didn't know why the boss was begging for forgiveness. Jiang took a step forward, extended his hand towards the boss, and his body began to emit Little Nine's poisonous mist. They were all injured, so he decided to take care of the boss. He knew this was a good opportunity, so he called Little Nine and told her it was time to eat. In the blink of an eye, Little Nine manifested in the form of the insect mother. She opened her mouth and prepared to devour the boss. It lifted its head, looked to one side, and upon seeing this, it couldn't help but be shocked. Little Nine began to devour the boss while Jiang simply remained silent and started smiling. Several system windows appeared. He had killed the boss called God of the Undead, and as a reward, the system granted him 76,690 experience points. Little Nine also transferred her 31,224 experience points to him. Thanks to the experience points, he went from level 25 to level 26. Each of his attribute points improved and he also obtained 10 potential points. In the blink of an eye, she completely devoured the boss, and her poisonous mist began to return to Jiang's body. Another system window appeared and congratulated everyone for defeating the boss and completing the secret realm called Village of the Undead. The system started calculating the reward. Seeing that Jong had defeated the boss, Duanfeng and the others quickly realized that he had also instantly killed all the necromancers in the village. Jiang put his hand behind his head, closed his eyes, and with a forced smile, he explained to them that it had been a coincidence that his poison could eliminate the necromancers. The system finished calculating the rewards and a mission status window appeared. Duanfeng, who was level 49, received a C rank evaluation. Chu Bulan, also level 49, received a D rank evaluation. Xiaoqi, who was level 46, received a D rank evaluation. Mu Hunkui, who was level 36, received an E rank evaluation. And finally Jong, who was level 26, received a triple S rank evaluation. A medal appeared in the sky, and upon seeing it, everyone was surprised. They had successfully cleared the secret realm called Village of the Undead, which was level 30 and had a nightmare difficulty. The system evaluation was triple S rank. As a reward, the system granted them the Dead Soul Medal, a special item that could be equipped and withstand one deadly attack. It was an item already bound to them and couldn't be transferred or sold. Du and Feng couldn't help but be amazed as the individual reward items were already quite good, and now they had also obtained a very advanced item. They had never before received rewards like these, all thanks to following Jong. They had won without doing anything. They approached Jong, put their hands on their knees, bowed their heads to him, and thanked him. He put his hand behind his head and started laughing. Jong, who had been the best, obtained many rewards. Among them were 2 books, a metal glove, a scroll, a crystal, a scythe, a necklace, a ring, and a shield. He crossed his arms, and while looking at the items, he thought it was no wonder that this was a level 30 secret realm. The death rate was too high. He quickly came to the conclusion that these items must be worth billions. Among the items, there was one item that caught his attention quite strongly. This item was called Invisibility Cape. It was of platinum quality and could grant 80 agility points and 50 energy points to the user. By using this cape, one could become invisible for 3 minutes with a cooldown time of 2 hours. Jong extended his hand towards the invisibility cape, and with a surprised look, he decided to keep it. For him, this cape was practical, useful, and fashionable. The other items were not going to be of much use to him, so he decided to sell them when he returned and buy pure blood for the insects. A portal appeared in the sky, along with a system window. Due to the mutation in the secret realm and having completed the challenge, this secret realm was about to disappear, so the system asked everyone to leave as soon as possible. This time the devour value had increased a lot, so if the insects drank a little more blood, they would be able to reproduce for a second time. Night fell, and they went back to the Night's Watch headquarters. They informed Jai Gang that the secret realm had mutated. Jong had conquered Mu Hunkwi, and he was also the one who had cleaned up the secret realm. Upon hearing this, Jai Gang couldn't help but be shocked. He asked everyone to leave the office as he wanted to speak alone with Jong. Du and Feng, who was standing behind Jong, responded with a understood. Several minutes later, when everyone left, Jong entered the office. Jai Gang turned his body towards him and with a serious look asked him to confess and be honest, as this way he would be treated leniently. But if he resisted, then he would be severely punished. Jong became somewhat confused, and with a trembling voice, he asked him what he meant by being honest. Jai Gang started staring into Jong's eyes. He had told the others that the Venom class could counteract necromancers, but Jai Gang knew this was just an excuse to deceive Du and Feng and the others. He knew that Jong was pulling his leg. While Jai Gang's eyes were shining, with a sinister look he asked Jong to tell the truth and also asked him what he was hiding. He began to look at him with a confused gaze and couldn't help but wonder what was happening. He started sweating, and Little Nine manifested in his consciousness. She was also terrified. He didn't know if the insects were about to be discovered. They were an ancient celestial plague, and if people found out about their existence, he didn't know if they would forgive him. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like the video.